続きまして、今度、卸の方に入りたいと思います。まずはじめは、Pjm クレイグ・グレイザーさんからお願いしたいと思います。Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. It is a great honor to be here in Tokyo, and I need to start with a little bit of a personal confession. First off, I bring you greetings from the United States and from Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. Yesterday, in touring around Tokyo, I saw a sign for Tokyo Disneyland, and I felt right at home with that because we call Washington, D.C. Disneyland on the Potomac River, especially these days, given everything that's happened. So it's good to have an excuse to be out of Washington, D.C., and also a great excuse to come and speak with you all. So I really do appreciate it very much. What I'd like to do today is, I started these slides with a great deal of ambition, because I kept thinking I've got this topic and that topic and the third topic. So I lined up 38 slides that I can't possibly get through in time. So I'm going to cover a couple of them, and then we're going to have to fast forward through some of them. But I look forward to, at the break, meeting and discussing them further with you, and welcome you all to come visit. Some of you have already, to come visit us at PJM or in Washington, D.C. I do want to, though, start with a little bit of overview of PJM, spend some time on the evolution of PJM markets. How did we get to where we are today? Perhaps there's some lessons that can be helpful to you here in Japan. Talk about particularly development of day-ahead and real-time markets and capacity market overview. Trying to do that all in the very limited time we have. I then got really, really ambitious and thought I'd talk about demand response programs. Unfortunately, probably we'll skip over that, but maybe we could pick that up in questions, as well as the wonderful topic of energy storage. Each one of these could be a separate seminar, but we'll have to skip over them, so bear with me. But I do want to close, when I get to it, with lessons learned in market development. And frankly, there are many challenges and opportunities we have in the States, and particularly in the PJM region. We're learning as well. We certainly, this experiment is not over by any means, so I'd like to share those with you as well. Starting out, a little overview of PJM, and by the way, this is a picture of our control room, which is an underground bunker. It was actually left over from the Cold War and was part of the hotline telecommunication system between then President John F. Kennedy and Nikita Khrushchev in the then Soviet Union. So a little bit of history. When you go into the control room, you see nuclear blast doors and a variety of other things. So it's a very interesting place. Needless to say, there wasn't a great demand for it, so we picked it up at a very low cost. And it has been a great place to run a control room. Very forward-looking. Thank you, Nikita, and thank you, John F. Kennedy, for that forward-looking view. But a little bit about PJM. We are the largest market in the United States and one of the largest in the world as well. We are the regional transmission organization in 13 states plus the District of Columbia. It's not geographically large, but contains over 61 million consumers in the United States, 165,000 megawatts of load, 179,000 megawatts of generation, and over 21% of the U.S. GDP is produced in the PJM region. Just to give you a scale, you can see where we fit in with many of the other large systems, and we have a strong relationship with TEPCO over the years as well. And I don't want to, you probably know much of this, but when I go in to meet with politicians, I have to describe what PJM does. So I use the analogy of the air traffic controller. We are responsible, just like the air traffic controller, to match generation to load, minute by minute, ensuring the reliability of the grid. We operate markets. We operate like the stock market for electricity, if you will, and we plan the expansion of the grid as well. And just from a governance perspective, we have over 900, at this point, 900 different members of PJM. They are all sorts of providers and businesses and public interest groups, et cetera, over 900 members of PJM. They divide themselves into various sectors, but provide advice and recommendations, and only advice and recommendations, to an independent board of managers. But transparency is the name of the game. We have lots and lots of meetings at PJM, lots and lots of discussion, and over 900 people showing up at our meetings at any one time. We have to take out big hotel ballrooms to have meetings. The hotels love our business here because of that. A little bit about the PJM evolution, which I think may be instructive, because I think the lesson that I've seen over the years is that market development comes in fits and starts, and success only comes with taking incremental steps, analyzing them before you move forward, and think about some things that you normally don't think about as you move forward, and other participants. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Let me give you an example of a fit and start that didn't work in the earliest days. We actually began with the theory that we could just operate a bilateral market. And we had a simple pricing mechanism. We had a single price for energy across the entire large footprint of PJM. We had trading rules to promote bilateral trading, and it didn't work. Why didn't it work? Because there was a fundamental difference in that we didn't focus on coordination of the market rules with physical operation. Coordination of the market rules with physical operation. What does that mean? What it means is those control room operators, before we move to the LMP-based market, would ask a generator to ramp down because they were potentially over-generating, causing an imbalance on the system. Yet we had no way to compensate them for ramping down, and so they wouldn't ramp down. And we'd have to, the control room operators would have to go into emergency procedures and direct ramp downs. Again, because the market and physical operations were not coordinated. A key takeaway to ensure, this has been a lesson we've learned the hard way through a detour, to coordinate those so that the dispatch signals are matching the market pricing signals so that everything aligns. Well, we got over that in 1998, and under this part of this progressive incremental system, we moved to a real-time locational marginal pricing market. That was, Albert, I think, discussed that earlier. I won't get into too much detail, but we slowly and incrementally added a day-ahead market, a financial transmission rights market, capacity ancillary services market, and more recently have allowed demand response and energy efficiency to be treated as resources in the market as well. So just a brief word on how the markets operate. We operate a series of markets that are sort of close in to real time. So the markets in blue are really ones operated by us as the regional transmission organization. They include a day-ahead energy market, a longer-term, up to 10-year financial transmission rights market, and a capacity market that 3 years forward that we call the reliability pricing model. There are a host of forward financial markets that are not regulated by PJM, not even regulated by our own regulator. They're actually separately operated. They depend on the market, but we are not presumptuous enough to try to operate those markets. They sort of send the forward financial signal, but they are based on the signals we are sending, again, and the nodes that were mentioned before. Once again, the concept, as you can see, between aligning physical operations, day-ahead markets, with the price signals sent longer term that the financial markets can absorb. I'm going to move quickly through. We don't have time for this, unfortunately, or I'd get the hook. You know how an LMP market works. If you don't, we can talk about that more. But to give you an example of just something that we are doing right now, is we have just moved to a 5-minute settlement. Before this, the dispatchers can direct price signals every 5 minutes, but we were settling them over an integrated hour of all of those price signals, and that's what people got paid. We did that for a variety of reasons, mostly dealing with, frankly, software associated with the complexity of that. But we have moved to, again, further align the dispatch instructions, the operating needs, and providing real-time incentives for operating performance by aligning the 5-minute directives that our dispatchers are providing, the 5-minute prices, with the settlements. It's a very recent development for us. I highlighted here for you as an example of places where we ourselves are still evolving. Well, any discussion of PJM wouldn't be appropriate without saying something about the capacity market. Capacity markets are a wonderful tool and a curse, if you will. And there is no greater controversy than capacity markets. We sometimes lose sight of the fact that out of the total picture, most of the customer's bill comes from the energy market. Yet the energy market, at least in PJM, is not controversial at all. People accept it. It's a voluntary market. People like it. They trade in it extensively. But capacity, which is a much smaller part of the bill, it remains to this day a great controversy. Why do we have a capacity market? It's about investment signals, but also retirement signals. It's about ensuring that we're lining up supplies for reliability, we're sending the right investment signals for new resources to come to provide that reliability, but equally important, because we have this debate going on in the US, it's sending a price signal that it's time for some older unit to retire. As I said, provide market signal to attract and retire, and frankly, to ensure that customer bills reflect the value of excess supply versus shortage. You could just do this through the energy prices. The state of Texas has no capacity market. They are depending, this summer may be a very big test for them, as energy prices could get extremely high. But with that comes volatility for the customers. With that also comes a lack of ability for the investor to really be able to have a steady price signal that they can rely upon. And when I first came to PJM, we had a daily capacity market, and we had this boom-bust cycle. One year, markets were great. Next year, the same capacity had no value, and everybody was depending on an energy price that was, again, so dependent on weather conditions. A very warm summer was great. A very cool summer was not. It became a very unsteady way to both attract new investment and to signal retirement. And the capacity market has produced some very positive results. We have changed out the fleet from an environmental perspective. When I first started in this business, it took over a decade to retire older units. We had a major environmental rule under the Obama administration, and we literally changed out about 36,000 megawatts of coal with new, cleaner natural gas resources in the space of 3 years. 3 to 5 years. We saw that entire, and from a reliability perspective, we didn't miss a beat. We knew what we had. So those are some of the success stories of capacity markets, but I'm not going to lie to you. There are many, many issues. One of them is paying for nothing problem. Customers saying, what am I paying for? This is the fixed cost of a resource, whether it runs or not. I'm basically paying for this machine to just sit there, and that is not fair for me to pay for something that provides me no service. When it provides service, I'll pay for it. If it doesn't provide service, I'm really not in the mood to pay for it. It's sort of like if you walked into a department store and you had a price to walk in, an admission fee to enter the department store to cover all the fixed costs of the lights, et cetera. Customers wouldn't be very happy about walking into that department store. So we get those all the time, and you have to argue about that back and forth. Another issue was ensuring performance and assigning risk of non-performance. What are you paying for as a capacity resource? What does that mean? Does the resource have to be there no matter what? If there's a failure, machines fail. If there's a failure, who bears that risk? A major issue. How do you deal with renewables? Renewables don't, you have to discount their capacity value, particularly wind and solar. How much do you discount it? How much, what is a fair price for the capacity portion of a renewable resource? We have a big debate going on in the United States right now about seasonal capacity. Should we have different capacity requirements for each season of the year? What does that do to the investment signal? And finally, questions about resilience and duration. Batteries, for example, may be great resources, but we do have to plan the system as if we need, it's a reliability need. We may need to call on the resource for an extended period of time. A battery, by definition, is not a great resource in and of itself, given the duration limitations to be able to do that. Well, I told you I was going to skip, so I'm going to show you skip through the more ambitious parts of what I was going to talk about and go to lessons learned, because I think that's really the heart of it. So we won't talk about demand response. We won't talk about energy storage, but lots of interesting stories to tell about that. See what you missed here. But I would like to talk about lessons learned and then end with new challenges. Perhaps the greatest lesson that we've learned is markets are a complex challenge with very, very high stakes. Someone once analogized this as to you're changing out the components on an airplane that can never land. Okay? While the airplane is flying, you're literally changing out its components. And although we think about that in terms of debates about the market rules, what we sometimes forget is that there's an interrelationship between the market rules and development of systems, software, and other computer systems to be able to manage these new market developments. Sometimes the system development is moving faster than the debate about the market rules, and sometimes it lags. You can't just have a debate about market rules without dealing with the back office systems that will be need to make those markets work, both within the RTO, but also within all of the customers that have to interact with this new set of markets and what their systems are. So that's a very big issue. And with that also becomes not just IT issues, but almost organizational issues, process issues, new ways to focus on things that we've never focused on before, new ways to value a resource and then transfer it into some price to customers is a real challenge, not just for the RTO, but for all of the market participants, much of which was discussed on our last panel. Okay, and with that, I want to say, I want to focus on the market participants. Let's not forget about them. Transitions are important, and soft landings are important too. Make sure before you implement any rules that you've got training ready, you've got simulations, and that your market participants are ready to interact. And let me quickly close, if I may, with some future challenges and opportunities. What are they? We'll discuss these more in discussion, perhaps. Distributed energy resources, both a great resource, but also a question. We had a blackout in Washington, D.C. It was an outage, not a major outage, a transmission problem, but the restoration took longer than it needed to take because there were all these resources that individual buildings had that were not visible to us as the system operator. So we had one building, a federal government building on the National Mall in Washington that was operating, another one that wasn't. And we didn't know what the restoration system was because we didn't know who was on and who wasn't, who was available to provide power to the grid and who wasn't. So visibility and dispatchability of those resources, integration of intermittence, fuel security, forward capacity markets, and competitive transmission investments are all sort of the unanswered questions that we're still working on. One that is bedeviling us, quite frankly, right now is government subsidies. There was a lot of talk about an independent regulator. I was a regulator, and I would argue there's no such thing as a completely independent regulator. Government is in this business. Government will always be in this business. And the United States, we're seeing sort of this retrenchment, both at the state level, where state governments are looking to support particular types of generating units, notwithstanding the market results. And most recently, President Trump announced his support for retaining coal and nuclear resources that might otherwise retire. So government will be in this market. You will be fooling yourself if you think you can have a truly independent regulator that will be able to act free of government. The best you can do is design the market to withstand those sort of political shocks, if you will. Distributed energy resources. Finally, gas-electric coordination, a major issue for us in the United States. We are becoming more and more dependent on this fuel. As you restructure the electricity markets, think about the supply chains. Frankly, we didn't do this enough in the United States. Think about the supply chains, be it IT supply chains for cybersecurity, be it fuel supply chains, to make sure they are resilient and reliable as well. So with that, I will close and invite you to come and visit at any time, and hope we can I look forward to your questions. Thank you very much.
I'm also personally happy to be here, so it's a good opportunity to continue the nice exchange we have had last year in Paris. I have the pleasure to present to you European wholesale market development. It's a big word. I will focus on the spot market development considered as shown by EPEX Spot. Everything is in the name EPEX Spot, meaning European Power Exchange for spot trading in Europe. Actually, this year we will celebrate our 10 years of existence. EPEX, as we say, was created in 2008 by two European power exchanges, by the French Powernext in Paris and by the German EX in Leipzig, with the dedicated mission to organize power spot trading in Europe on its continental markets. We started off quite moderately with Germany and in France, then integrated these markets with one trading system, with one membership, with one clearinghouse. Then Switzerland, Austria followed in 2015. We merged with the Amsterdam Power Exchange, and the Benelux and GB markets were added. So today we are a real European company. We are headquartered actually in Paris. Many people think, well, okay, as the most liquid market in Europe is the German one, you are necessarily based in Leipzig. We do have an office in Leipzig. Leipzig is also the place where EX, European Energy Exchange, our mother company, one of the two mother companies, is located, and of which we are, and of whose group we are part of today. A glimpse on our shareholder structure, which is quite relevant for our business. Actually, we have two pillars. We have the financial markets coming from the exchanges on the one hand, EX being in the very end part of Deutsche Börse Group, and we have a transmission system operator pillar, a holding of TSOs. The French one of the four Germans, the Austrian, the Belgian, the Swiss, and the Dutch one. So it really shows again it's a real European company, and actually we made a nationality count last year at EPEX. We are roughly 150 people, and we have 14 different nationalities, which is a real pleasure to work in that place. Just as a reminder, who is in charge of what? It's just giving the overview. of the various roles. The future markets organized by EX to hedge against the price variations on the financial markets up to the next 6 years. Optimized generation on the day ahead, value the flexibility on the intraday market. This is becoming more and more important, as we will see in a couple of minutes, because the intraday market has become the market to appropriately integrate renewables into the system, followed by the balancing responsibilities of the respective TSOs in order to ensure the system security. Derived from that, the two markets we're organizing the day-ahead auction 7 days a week, a year around, on all our markets. On the one hand, and a very important thing and a particularity of Europe is that the day-ahead markets are coupled among each other. That means there are several. We are not the only spot power exchange, but the biggest one. There are several ones, and the markets are coupled, which means that the transmission system operators calculate the available capacity on the borders, and the spot power exchange integrates the transport capacity into the order book, so that the exchange simultaneously auctions the transfer capacity and the electricity. As a result, prices are strongly converging in Europe. Takes place at noon. Continuous intraday, that you know, it's a continuous price formation. As soon as an order is executable, it can be matched 24 hours a day on all the market areas as well. Intraday auctions, we have been developing intraday auctions. We have started with the German market in 2011. On the German market, the balance responsible parties need to be balanced in a 15-minute rhythm. It means that in the very end, you have 96 price signals over the day for every 15 minutes, and that is becoming more and more important. For example, if you have renewable generation, the 15-minute product helps to better come to grips with the ramping constraints of a renewable producer, according to the solar development during the day. These are the current markets: France, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Benelux, and the UK. We are not only operating these markets with one system, one membership, and in the very end, one exchange. But also we are offering market operation services, is what you see here. These 4 countries: Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, and Romania. These 4 countries are coupled among each other, but not yet hooked to the rest of Central Western Europe. We are also offering market operation services for CPEX, the Serbian power exchange, and we are of course very ambitious, because by next year we want to expand our services to the Scandinavian and Baltics market and Poland. So actually we are operating on 8 markets for the time being, at 21 borders, and the entire area reflects roughly the half of the consumption of the European Union, and over 280 trading participants are active on these markets, with a total trading volume of 535 terawatt hours of traded volume in 2017. So who is trading on the exchange? Maybe quite instructive for the Japanese market. So we have the classical trading companies who play quite an important role, because they bring additional liquidity to the markets, although they do not necessarily have power assets. We have the classical utilities on all our markets. Quite an important and growing group actually are the municipal and the regional suppliers, the famous Stadtwerke you have in Germany and in Austria, but also more and more aggregators who are trading for other companies. Some energy-intensive industries and the TSOs, some of them intervening on the intraday market to buy back the power that has been lost through the transmission. What is the shares of these trading participants? The biggest group are the utilities and the aggregators, followed by the local suppliers and the trading companies. And this share actually already makes up roughly 80 to 85% of the trading participants. As said, the biggest market is Germany. This is also reflected in the geographical repartition of memberships. This actually does not mean that all these 37% are only German companies. It above all means that many of the European or international companies also trade on the German market without necessarily being German. And these are the other shares of the geographical distribution. Let's have a look at the price evolution. Price matters. Price will increasingly matter. We have heard that. And here are some interesting lessons to be learned. Because the price on a certain market is not only depending on supply and demand, is in Europe in particular highly dependent on the availability of the cross-border transport capacity. As I said, these markets are coupled, but there are also international factors which have an impact on the price level on the European market. Subprime crisis in 2007, increase of Brent in 2008, also in the shale gas revolution in the US had an impact on the coal exports from the US to Europe, lowering the coal price in Europe and again impacting the spot price. Second interesting lesson is that all the prices on the different markets, so we have here Germany, France, UK, Netherlands, Switzerland and Belgium, they are all quite aligned. For example, in winter 2017 we had a cold spell all over Europe, and the price spreads between the markets. In France, for example, we had a monthly baseload of 80 to 85 euros the megawatt hour. In the UK, we had 70 to 75. These haven't even been price spikes, but the prices were quite similar, quite aligned, due to the fact that these markets are coupled among each other. And of course, it is also reflected in the price evolution. If, for example, between 2013 and 16, we compare Germany and France, we have roughly the same level. 2 minutes. Okay. Let's have a look at the volumes. As Germany is the most liquid market, the highest shares on the day ahead, on the day ahead and on the intraday are made on the German market. 2 lessons: 400 terawatt hours on the European day ahead market. What we can see is that the volumes on the day ahead are stagnating, whereas the volumes on the intraday market are increasing year on year between 10 and 15%. So we have 17 terawatt hours on the intraday and our intraday markets, and it has almost doubled over the last 5 years. and this trend for sure will continue. Technology or prices, who will win? We are quite sure that it will be a concomitant evolution. This just gives you an overview of all the technological innovations we are doing within the EX group. Just want to focus on two of them. The microgrid platform we want to establish with LO3 Energy based in Brooklyn, and local flexibility markets. It's a pilot project in Germany, aiming at demonstrating that 100% renewable production can mean 100% security of supply. The more concrete goal is to relieve local congestion management. So we have an integrated wholesale market where market coupling helps to relieve congestions on the borders or to reduce them significantly. However, on local level, we do not have any means to do so for the time being. So the idea is that EPEX will establish local flexibility markets where the price signal indicates to the distribution system operator where to better regulate the grid and consumption patterns in coordination with the TSOs. There are a number of initiatives going on in Germany. It's the NRA in Europe, it's the NRA project in Germany, the SMILE initiative in France, and the Universal Smart Energy Framework, I think it is, in the Netherlands, and we're all part of those kind of initiatives. The only one with a complete implementation deadline is the NRA project. It's, by the way, a project which is financed by the Ministry of Energy and Economics of 250 million euros, and where we have a proof of concept phase until 2020. Microgrids, as I said, we want to link the microgrids LO3 is developing with the wholesale market for the prosumer to be able, for example, to purchase exceeding energy to the wholesale market through an interface. Thank you very much, and sorry for having been too long.
フォーゲルさん、ありがとうございました。続きまして、JPX 村上さんにお願いしたいと思います。村上理事長、お願いいたします。すみません、時間がない。少しも
Thank you very much, Mr. Ogawa. I appreciate very much giving me this kind of marvelous opportunity in order to present the present status of Japan's wholesale market called JEPX. Since the limited time is quite limited for me, so I just skip several prepared speeches, but I'd like to highlight major points of recent developments at our market. As you know, the JEPX main market is a day-ahead market, so-called spot market. Just I'm going to show the and its liquidity is based on a voluntary bidding scheme. JEPX does not have functions of a transmission operator that are performed by the OCTO. The grid is rather simple compared to mesh styles of Europe as well as US. Why I'm going to speak this kind of expression, I have to first say, I have to first emphasize the differences between JPX and EPEX, as well as PGM. As you know, PGM has the functions of an exchange as well as RTO, and its day-ahead market is mandatory pooling. They will manage day-ahead market and real market, as just explained, maintaining the network balancing. EPEX is an exchange with voluntary bidding style market like JPX. And balancing groups make best efforts in making their position balanced. Networks there are just now EPEX explained, internationally connected and controlled by TSOs, and liquidity is effectively transferred. Having these differences in mind, let's move to tables. Page 1 and page 2, just a summary of JPX. We started the operation in 2005, and complete liberalization started from 2016. This is the performance of exchange. As of the March of this year, we have 135 members. Overall volume reached to 60 terawatt hours in fiscal 2017. Timeline of markets, almost the same to other markets. This is the historical data of total volumes. We have substantial increase in these months due mainly to two factors. One is the gross bidding started April 2017. And other one is expanding business by new entrants. Let's see the details more. Who are the major players? This page just shows sell-side players are big nine. This one is big nine, so-called nine utilities. Buy-side players are mainly new entrants, occupied about 66%. More precisely, this orange portion includes IPPs. Page 5, this is the monthly volume over nationwide consumption. Our share is reaching almost 20%. And the business of new entrants is also expanding to 13% or more. This is the historical system price since our start. Here we can see very high level of prices when oil prices reach more $100 level. Recent developments of system prices, together with some relevant indices, are shown here. We see similar ups and downs. A dotted line of mixed curve with oil and consumption explains seasonal changes in system prices. Here we can see a more clear relationship with consumption. We see every weekend prices and consumption drops. This year, winter, end of January as well as first half of February, we saw a very severe winter, very low temperature as well as heavy snowing. Therefore, the solar panel covered with snow and lasted relatively long time. Therefore, we see some jumps and down in prices. Towards the end of March, weather became quite mild, so both consumption as well as prices went down. Now, I'd like to touch upon intraday market. Volume is relatively small due mainly to small imbalances. And this is changes in prices. Because of the size of the scale, perhaps we have to see more changes, but if I take this scale, both prices are almost the same. Now, most recent topic relates to renewables. This is the date of March 5th, and this is the March 23rd. This day, we had quite cloudy and somewhere rainy days here. This is a map, weather map. And on this day, we could see a very clear Japan. And the total consumption demand in blue close to the total generation. Here, on a very fine day, we could see so-called dark curve here. This difference is the capacity of the solar and wind. Prices here relatively higher than the 23rd because of the more demand. But during midday time on 23rd, we see lower prices, but higher prices in evening time. Now, please let me see this final page. We started non-fossil value market transaction last month. And we plan to move to implicit auctions this year, October. That makes the overall market so-called playing field style. In closing, our missions are as an exchange, price transparency and cross monitoring and robust operations of exchange management as well as IT systems. I believe these missions are shared by all participants here. Particularly reliable price indication helps new businesses, as already discussed previous sessions, and support more sophisticated resource allocation in Japan, I hope. Efficiency is the key for Japan's economy because we have a very severe financial debt amount and struggling with very sluggish productivity of economy. And we do not have energy resources. Therefore, we have to see efficiency. Let's save energy resources, labor force, and time and money under the difficult structure of Japan's economy. Thank you.
こんな 上様ありがとうございました。それでは今お話しいただいたスピーカーの方々、前の方にお願いしまして、この後パネルディスカッションに移りたいと思います。ちょっと時間の方が限られておりまして、12時半少し過ぎてしまうかもしれませんけれども、その点ご発言の方を短めで、お願いしたいと思います。でこの後のパネルディスカッションですけれども、モデレーターをしていただくのは PwC の富田様で、あります。それでは富田さんよろしくお願いいたします。
Thank you very much for the introduction, and I think we have an excellent panelist to discuss about this important issue about the wholesale market development. And then, although the part of the emphasis may vary for all those like markets, we would like to focus on 4 points on the discussion and have your inputs on the views of how we can learn from your experiences. First, about the price. What's a price signal means in the wholesale market? And the second point, what's the evolution of a trading volume? We have experienced the changes in the Japanese market, but those points would be important in your market experience. And then if we could move, depending on the time, market participants, especially on the point that we are now increasing, we are looking at the new entrants in the market, but the role of the traditional power market players too, and in adding some players like financial players into the market, how that changes play the role. And then in the end, maybe some like additional points, technological challenges and the future. So first, I would like to start asking Chen-san on the market pricing. You mentioned that the price needs to have the competitive, liquid, transparent market. And then in the price signal, what's your experience importance of the wholesale market? And then you also mentioned about the negative price. And then what's the role that we need to think about the price signal and then incentives for the future of the power market?
Thank you. Thanks for that question. So I would say that in general, to generalize very broadly, the price signals in the wholesale market clearly are very important to govern dispatch and trading and so on. But I think they're becoming less and less important as a component of investment decisions. And that's for a variety of reasons. I think capacity markets are clearly one reason. Renewable energy auctions are another reason. So there are these other mechanisms now which are government-run essentially, or sort of centrally run mechanisms for allocating investment into different types of resources that have different value in the market, which are sort of eroding the importance of wholesale prices as a sort of driver of investment. And we're sort of interested to see how that develops. I think we see that changing, perhaps even going more in that direction, because renewables will grow and will depress power prices in general. They have a depressing effect on power prices. And you start to see negative power prices as well, which there's a lot of debate about negative prices. Are they a market failure? I think they're a sign of a market requiring more flexibility, because if you have negative prices, it's a sign that generators aren't able or aren't willing to reduce their output, and demand isn't flexible enough to ramp up to use that power. So I think in general the dynamics are changing a lot, and I think those power prices, they're going to play less of a role in investment, but continue to play a very important role in terms of managing the short-term resources that are in the market.
Thank you very much. And then the same question to Mr. Vogel-san. I understand that you are dealing with a multiple, like a region, and then trying to couple those like a cross-border. The same question about the price signal. How do you see on those like a development? And then each area has a different characteristic on how those new technology, whole new renewable sources incorporate. So on those like a price signal, also on how on those like negative prices when that happens, how do you see those like effect and then the future on your EPX?
Yeah, thank you. Well, basically, the price signal 10 or 20 years ago, after the liberalization of the markets, has become the main driver of the economic decisions along the entire energy value chain. I may agree with what Albert says, that it is less and less a reliable signal for long-term investment in new generation, but it definitely is the key element for short-term consumption and production patterns. That is a very fundamental thing. Second, as shown on one of the slides, we do not have one price signal, we have several price signals. We have a price signal to hedge against the fluctuations on the futures market. We have a price signal to optimize the generation on the day ahead. We have price signals 96 on the German market to value flexibility, because products are becoming more and more granular and respond to what the market needs in order to be able to respond to the growing influx of renewable intermittent sources. So that's an important lesson as well. There is not one price signal, there are several price signals. Third, on the day ahead time frame, we have a European price signal. Of course, national markets continue to exist, but the Dutch price is being fixed on the European market. The German price is fixed on the European market, and so on. So there is actually no longer a national price. And if there is sufficient transport capacity on the borders, prices on the European market converge. And for example, between, I'm always using the comparison between France and Germany. It's not because I'm Franco-German, it's more because those are the two lead markets today in Europe. And despite the huge differences in the generation mix and energy policy, the example of coupling markets shows that on wholesale level, in 40 to 45% of the time, prices in France and Germany are the same. This has not existed before these markets have been coupled in 2010. Negative prices, just last word because you were asking for it. Honestly, it's a price signal as any other positive price signal as well. When exceeding production meets low consumption, we have negative prices. And I entirely agree with what Albert said. It also indicates a lack of flexibility. We're working on offering more flexibility to the markets, and the products we develop may serve to come to grips with that problem as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And the same question, and also one point about Gracerson. On the, you mentioned about the PJM development, and then having when you see the development, it's a moving target that you have to see. So if we see the point from the price signal, how do you see the development, and how PJM see those, like the role of the PJM in the indication of the price signal?
Okay, thank you for the comment, and I'm going to shake it up a little bit by disagreeing with Albert here, just to get a debate going, because I actually think the price signal, it is incredibly important, but it depends on what your goal is. If your goal is to just support renewables, you can do that through government subsidy, and you don't even need the wholesale market at that point. If the goal is to truly have a competitive market, a non-discriminatory market where all resources can compete, so the most efficient resource wins, then I would argue the pricing, though, is incredibly important. And frankly, in the United States, particularly in the PJM region right now, the merchant generation model is on the ropes. We have a very difficult situation because we're moving back into the realm of government subsidies for particular types of generation. Interestingly, they're in two different directions. At the state level, they're in favor of renewables. President Trump recently indicated his support for federal subsidization of nuclear and coal. So they're going in different directions, but they are all out-of-market payments that are occurring. One thing that's playing out right now before a regulator is, what do you do about it? What does the market do about it? And there are, just to give you an example, there are sort of 3 different options. This is in real time. I was just on my iPad looking at this, that are before the regulator. One option is, this is a government policy in support of whatever, renewable, nuclear, coal. Let it happen. Investors are big boys and girls. They take it into account. Just let it compete against those resources that aren't subsidized. Don't worry about it, notwithstanding its price suppressive effect. The other extreme is to say, notwithstanding the government program, the competitive market is the goal. And therefore, we're going to sort of reprice all of that generation as if that subsidy didn't exist. And therefore, if it doesn't clear, the fact that the government wanted more wind, solar, nuclear, coal, you take your pick, that's tough, because the competitive market dictated a different result. Those are 2 extremes. We at PJM are literally playing this out in front of the federal regulator right now. We came up with a middle ground that, frankly, we have internal debates whether we came up with the right middle ground, but it says we're going to respect that policy. We're going to allow that unit to clear, to reflect the state's interest in that particular, supporting that particular resource, but we're not going to allow its suppressive effect across all the other resources. So we're going to allow it to clear, but restate its price to eliminate the price suppressive effect, particularly of renewables and negative pricing. Because in our view, we're seeing negative pricing not occurring because of lack of flexibility. We're seeing it occurring by definition through government programs. And that, to me, is a different kettle of fish than flexibility or non-flexibility. So stay tuned. This is a very live issue right now in the United States, and I think is at the heart of the future in our country of the competitive market model versus a whole bunch of programs to do government intervention outside of the market.
Thank you very much. I think this is a wide opinion that stimulates our understanding of a wholesale market. And so for these discussion, I would like to ask for Murakami-san on this, like what JPX or Japanese market can learn and what will be the challenge for the price signal in the future.
Thank you very much. Allow me speaking in Japanese. Please prepare. 価格の話になりましたけれども、先ほどお示した通り、私どもの卸売マーケット、この数ヶ月、広く言って1年で非常に出来高が増え、ジャンプしてきました。これは先ほど申し上げたように電力会社の協力によるグロスビディングが行われている。で、公表されている話では当初のターゲット販売量の 10% を出す、今年はこれを 20% というお話があります。同時に自由化されてから新規ビジネス参入者による調達も増えてきている。そういう中でこの価格はどういうことを意味しているのか、まだ短期間のうちで出来上がっている価格なので、もう少ししっかりとした検証をしなきゃいけない部分があると思います。グロスビディングのかなりの部分が買い戻されているのも事実ですから、ただ少なくともこういう形で市場が大きくなり、価格というものを事業者が非常に意識すること、それによっていかに対外的第三者、これは消費者であり投資家であり関係者に対して価格をいかに透明なものとして使っているというその使い方、これが広まるかどうかが一つだと思います。それから今現在残念ながら私ども先ほどのディスカッションでもありましたように デイアヘッドマーケットはありますが、先渡し市場、私どもオープンはしていますが、一月ものの先渡し市場しか成立していません。それも出来高は少ない。先物市場については先ほどどなたかがおっしゃってたけれども、なかなか準備中ということで、いつできるかっていうのがまだ分かりませんが、そういう意味で中長期の価格、いわゆるフォワードカーブを含めた価格の認識がもう少ししっかりできてこないといけないんだろうと。でもそのためにはまずはやはり現物の市場が大きくなること、そして同時にエクスチェンジマーケットだけじゃなくてOTC のマーケットでもいいんです。相対でもあるいは相対のデリバティブでもいいんですが、要するにそういう形で取引が盛んになるということがまずはファンダメンタルに必要な話じゃないのかなと。もう一つ少し言わせていただきますと、アメリカあるいはヨーロッパと違って電力取引というものについてまだまだ習熟してないところがいっぱいあります。専門のディーラーも数が少ないというふうに聞いています。で、私は前に金融市場で働いていましたが、金融の自由化は1979年から実質的に日本で始まりました。橋本政権でビッグバンが言われたのは1998年、約20年かかっています。で、その後実質的に競争が起きているわけですね。となると、非常に細かく言えば1995年にIPP がスタートして以来の自由化は始まってますが、料金自由化は2016年に始まったばっかりです。そういう意味ではもう少し時間を見た上でどういう意味のある価格が市場でできてくるのか、それを使おうとする関係者がどれだけ増えるのかということに私は非常に関心を持っているところですし、今ここに来ておられる海外の皆さんはそれをビジネスチャンスと捉えて非常に意識高く、日本の市場に入ってこられようとしているので、やはりそういった意味では他国の例を、それは成功ばっかりでなくて、さっきどなたかおっしゃってましたが、失敗の例も含めてしっかり学んで価格シグナルを出していくべきだろうと。そういう意味では私はエクスチェンジマーケットを提供するものとして、フェアなマーケットを先ほど申し上げましたが、しっかりとしたモニタリングを含めてフェアなマーケットを提供していく。同時にこれは当局とのコミュニケーション必要ですが、極力バリアがなく、ルールが開けたそういったマーケットになればならなきゃ価格シグナルのその重要性を理解していただけないんだろうというふうに思っているところです。
Thank you very much, Murakami-san. And together with the price signal point, I think it was mentioning about the introduction of the gross bidding for Japan for the stimulating. So the next topic about how we see the volume of the market, and then one example is the gross bidding, but how the wholesale market plays the role for the stimulating this increase on the trading volume or to increase the liquidity. And once those package, some like measures are introduced, and then how after that see the changes, how you go to the market to let the market play those roles. Is there some experiences in the past for those stimulus package? And then the first, I would like to ask Grazer-san on those, like the role of Pjm. How do you see the trading volume and those your experience on the historical moves in your market?
Yes, thank you for the question. Spot market trading has moved up and down in PJM. It actually, back in 2000, it was only about 18%. It was somewhere between 5 and 18% in its first couple of years. Now it is at roughly about 30% of all transactions are done on the spot market. That means 70% of the transactions are done through what we call self-supply or bilateral agreements. I actually think that's a fairly healthy mix. We've analyzed the ups and downs associated with the amount of spot market trading. And at the end of the day, it comes to sort of a lack of the ability of load interests and generators or suppliers to come together on a singular long-term agreement, long-term forecast on price. And with so many other things happening, be it government intervention or changes in market rules, or it's not surprising that we're seeing that. But as a result of that, and we're in a period of very low prices in the United States, we're seeing an increased reliance on the spot market. But so this has waxed and waned over the years. I think it waxes and wanes as a result of different perceptions of risk associated with long-term, where long-term prices are going. Some of that I think is healthy. I'd be interested in others' thoughts on that. Some of that may be showing some fundamental flaws in terms of the transparency of the prices in the market. But I think until there is some coming together on what that forward curve actually looks like over time, people are going to continue to just be in the spot market and take their chances.
Thank you very much. And then next, I would like to ask Vogel-san on your mentioned in your presentation intraday market volume increasing, and then they had on the flat. And how do you see, together with the evolution of the historical volume, and your view about the trading volume, and how you would like to see those like a future as from the wholesale market EPX point of view?
Yeah, thank you for the question. First of all, it's almost trivial to say it in this audience, but the spot market is a physical market, and as a physical market, it is also limited by the constraints of the grid. The grid, we have national grids, but these grids are linked through market coupling. And you are right to point out that on the day-ahead market in Europe, we have quite mature markets. So we have reached a certain level with a very good degree of liquidity. And on some markets, for example, on the Swiss market and on the German market, the traded volumes reflect almost 50% of the consumption. In France, it's now 20% of the consumption, and GB, Netherlands, 15% of the consumption. So there's still room for maneuver on these markets, but we have, for the time being, reached a certain level. On the other hand, what we see is that on the basis of the available statistics of the OTC market, where almost by definition you do not have any public statistics, because it's not public, it is not transparent, it is maybe discriminatory, but this we don't know. The organized market through an exchange has gained volumes also from the OTC market. The OTC market in Europe remains the biggest market. 2/3 of all traded volumes are OTC, but 10 years ago it was 75%. So that is a tendance lourde, as you say in French. It's a slow development. Maybe it will go on the day-ahead market, the growth we had before. Now, on the intraday market, this growth is really astonishing because volumes have doubled in the last 5 years. We cannot make any exponential forecasts. As you know, the entire development of renewables is highly dependent on the regulatory frameworks in each country, on the subsidy schemes, but also on the European regulatory framework we have. So to bring renewables closer to the market, to make that renewables take responsibility for the price signal. If, for example, in Germany, we really want to have 80% of renewable production by 2050, it should mean that we need to have a reliable security of supply by that time. Last word on gross bidding. Gross bidding is possible on EPEX markets, but due to its high liquidity and due to the fact that there are many complex or more and more complex products tradable, our market participants are trading less and less gross bidding. You know the system, you sell for 25K, you buy back for 20. The exchange shows 25, but for the member you have only 5K being netted. So this was done, for example, on the UK day-ahead market. It was an incentivized scheme by Ofgem, if I remember it correctly, to have the day-ahead index, to render it more significant. So to create a boost of liquidity. And it was done by a couple of the big six on the UK market, but on all the other markets, due to the complexity of the products, there's also some kind of risk inherent in the gross bidding strategy, which, to our understanding, explains why it is done less and less on our markets.
Thank you.
It is a very useful tool to create liquidity on the market, and the figures by JPEX are surprising and impressive.
Thank you much. I think we are observing that changes and as new changes. And then if you could have a brief comment from Chen-san, and then in the end, I think we are very much pressing time. And then a last point was a question about Murakami-san for the players about regarding the financial players. The new market development will have more on the financial player entering into the market in addition to the traditional players in the wholesale market. So how do you see the effect on that? And I understand that point is was raised by the Murakami-san, so would like to have your opinion on that. If you could briefly mention about that on
specifically to financial players.
Yes.
Another sort of major topic, we've had sort of mixed results, to be honest, with financial players in our market. The conventional theory is that they help to bring more price convergence between the day-ahead and real-time market. Unfortunately, as a result of some quirks in rules, people have taken advantage of the rules. And we've seen some situations where financial players have not actually provided the promised benefits. My recommendation is this is one that I think requires some very good conversation with the regulator, make very clear what the rules are. People are going to look for and exploit, frankly, differences in the market rules. You want to do that when it's constructive. You don't want that to happen when it's just a mistake, something that wasn't thought about. So financial players are both a blessing and a curse, if you will. And I would suggest a lot of communication and examination of the rules. Don't just open it up as a free-for-all for the financial players.
The same question for Chen-san on that.
Yeah, I actually wanted to make a slightly different comment, actually, about the role of corporate consumers, so corporate users. So slightly different types of players, but thinking about large energy consumers who have a large energy bill, traditionally did have a role to play, and what we're starting to see is perhaps potentially in the absence of some of the long-term price signals that we've all been talking about, are sort of less visible these days. We've seen corporations starting to step in to sign power purchase agreements with renewable projects, for example. So they'll sign, it won't be a 20-year PPA like a utility might sign, but it might be a 5-year or a 10-year PPA. And that's helping to create that sort of strong link between the demand side and the supply side on a slightly longer term basis than, say, the spot market. So we're seeing that in a number of markets. Here in Japan, the non-fossil market, I don't believe it allows consumers or corporate consumers to procure the certificates as yet. But potentially in the future, if that were allowed, then that would also create another avenue for that sort of long-term price discovery.
So the same question for Vogel-san from the EPX experience on the market participant.
Maybe I'd like to answer in a different way on the question. What we observe is that we have more and more players on the spot market, companies which have not even existed in 2014 or 2015. High-tech companies which are offering more and different services in demand-side response, in energy efficiency, and also in spot trading. And those kind of small companies with variegated portfolios are becoming more and more numerous. That's very interesting to observe. Financial players, second interesting observation, it's public information, we have lost big banks. All the JP Morgans or what have you, no, Deutsche Bank still is, no, we have lost Deutsche Bank, and the French ones are still there. So we had 6 or 7 big banks until 2016, until they changed their strategy and they were no longer trading on the spot market on behalf of their clients. So we do not know why, we are not supposed to know why, but it just happens. So this also explains a little bit the loss of liquidity on the day-ahead markets. But a very big part of the cost of our customers are the classical utilities. So we are part of the old world where we help to optimize their portfolio, but already part of the new world we are entering in when we're talking about the new flexibility, the new technologies, the flexibility, the microgrids, where we'll offer new markets for new players, which again have not existed a couple of years ago.
Okay. Thank you very much for the valuable information. I think this is very important, the information discussion that we had, and we will look forward for the further exchanges of your experiences and see the development of the market for Japan. Thank you very much.
それでは午前のセッション、長時間にわたりありがとうございました。予定より20分ほど遅れてしまいました午後のセッションですけれども、1時半を予定していましたが、10分遅く1時40分からとしたいと思いますので、1時40分から再開したいと思います。なお、午前でお帰りの際には、お使いになったレシーバーあるいはアンケート用紙をご提出いただければと思います。それではこれで午前のセッションは終わりたいと思います。長時間どうもありがとうございました。